Okay, so what I want to do with you guys today is I just want to open with that little discussion. I want to give you the first presentation. It's not long, okay? And then I'm going to put you guys on a little activity, and it's a group-based activity, and there'll be a presentation end to it. You'll have to present kind of what your group has at the end. So we'll talk about that at the end of the period, and it may spill over into next period a little bit. So it's not something we have to wrap up by 12 o'clock today. We think and name in one world. We live and feel in another. Okay, so when I talk about emotion, we kind of have to have a working definition of what this means. So TOK in its curriculum treats emotion as one of the four main ways of knowing. In the traditional IB curriculum, it has existed as one of the four ways. It is still considered a way of knowing. Now the ways of knowing have expanded out to 8, but the four traditional ways, emotion has always been a part of it. Okay? As I said just a minute ago, some view emotion as an obstacle to knowledge, not a way of knowing. And you should have a good reason to be suspicious of emotion. Okay? If you're angry, if you're frightened, if you're confused, which things we could call emotional, it's possible that you will not use your reasoning center well. You will not perceive things necessarily the correct way. And you may not speak in a way you'd normally speak if you're really running on high emotions. In other words, you might be interfering with your acquisition of knowledge and interfering with the other ways of knowing. So we often say to people, hey, be reasonable. Or don't be so emotional, as if emotional is a bad thing and reason is a good thing. We rarely say things like, hey, stop being so reasonable, be more emotional. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, I'm just saying that's more rare going on. Okay. Often when we recover from an emotional outburst, if you get so emotional, you say things like, well, I don't know what came over me. Okay? This suggests that we ought to be able to control our emotions. Okay? Now, at the same time, emotions are super important to us. Imagine your world without them. Imagine if you had no emotion. Okay? So, some people might actually say that emotion is the best way to actually come up with the final decision on knowledge. Like, I think I'll trust my gut is an expression. It's not your gut you're really trusting, it's your emotions that you're trusting. So I'm going to ask you this question. Which emotion do you think is the hardest to control? Okay? Now this takes into account just the list we showed you. If you had to control an emotion, like right now, some of you might be bored. Okay? Can you control that? Can you control your boredom? Some of you might be feeling happy because something just happened in the hallway on the way here. Can you control that? In other words, can you make that go off if necessary? So the word that came out that I heard first was anger. Can you not control your anger? Does anyone think that there's a different emotion that's harder to control than anger? Fear? Jealousy? Those all three of those, by the way, are kind of negative type emotions, right? Fear, jealousy, anger. Is there any positive emotions that you think are really hard to control? Love? Excitement? Is it hard to be not excited? Interesting. Okay. Excuse me. Okay. So I'm going to show you a little bit of what psychologists say about some of this stuff and the nature of emotions themselves. By the way, the word emotion comes from the Latin verb, which means to move. That's where the word comes from. So think of it that way, as you are moving in your position. Okay? Sure, it could move you. Now, we kind of have to be a little more sort of defining here. So, is there a difference in emotions between feelings, passions, and moods? Okay, are all of those speaking about the same thing? Okay, well, if I say this, emotion is various feelings and external forms of behavior, and it can vary in intensity from mild to like extreme. Okay, whereas the word passion is usually reserved for a very strong emotion. We don't usually use the word passion around things like, how was that sandwich? Oh, passionately liked it. No, passion is usually something that is a very strong emotion. Whether it's passionate love or passionate rage, it's kind of an adjective to describe, maybe more accurately, an adverb to describe the strength of that particular emotion. Now, the word mood might be considered an emotion that lasts for a long period of time. So for example, you could say, well, I've been in a bad mood all day, but during the day where you were in a bad mood, there may have been points where you were happy, right? I mean, there may have been a point, but overall, you were in a bad mood. So I would say that mood is a word that describes emotion over a period of time. And you, I guess, define that period of time. You could say, I've been in a mood all period, I've been in a mood all day, I've been in a mood all year, right? That's kind of something that you are defining. But you also understand that in that period of time, your emotional state might have actually varied. Okay. The other one that I actually should have removed that, but it's still in here, the idea of intuition is actually something that goes a little beyond just regular emotions. We're going to look at that one separately in our final unit. Anyone know who Blaise Pascal is? The author of this quote? He's a mathematician, that's right. And have you ever done the Pascal math contest, right? Okay. Interestingly enough, he was not just a mathematician, he also considered himself a philosopher, right? And we talked about this a little bit in the reason unit. You're actually going to see a lot of that mathematician-philosopher overlap, which is not something you'd normally expect, or should you? That people who work so intensely with math also think so philosophically, because it seems like math would be the last place that philosophy would go. I think when you first hear about philosophy, most people tend to think of it as kind of a very artsy thing, like these artists who, like, you know, wear sandals all the time and have like dreadlocks. They're the philosophers. The mathematicians with the pocket protectors and the lab coats, they're not the philosophers, but the fact is, a lot of them are, okay? And maybe this emotion unit can help clear up some of the reasoning behind that. Okay, so I'm going to talk about something called primary emotions, and I'm going to introduce something called the JAMES-LANGE theory. It's actually two people, James and Lang. It's not Mr. James Lang. So according to psychologists, there are actually only 6 primary emotions. So psychologists define the emotions as just these 6 things. Happiness, you got that one. Sadness, fear, anger, surprise, and disgust. And the reason they say these 6 primary emotions exist is that they are biological. They say that even newborn babies can show these 6 primary emotions. And they say any other emotion that you say is kind of just a derivative of these ones. Now, this is again controversial. I'm not saying you need to agree with this. I'm just saying this is what the psychologists say. Now, how could they tell that a baby was feeling one of these primary emotions? Because they can't speak, so they can't say, like a newborn baby can't say, I feel disgusted. Of course not. How do they tell? Facial expressions could certainly be a way. Do you feel that that is a clue for a lot of emotions, your facial expression? But is it a clue for all your emotions? Can you use that to suppress emotion? In other words, if you're feeling really, really angry right now, can you modify that with your face? Can you change the way your face looks? So you can kind of control that for the most part. But a baby maybe can't. But how does a baby show some of these things? Now maybe I should have one of you who's more of a method actor in here try to show me the facial expression of one of those primary emotions. You want to do one?
No, I just want to say something like fear, anger, disgust, sadness, stuff like that.
Maybe just the act of crying?
And the way they cry changes. Like,
okay. So that's a physical response as well. Like there's actually tears coming out. Is there other ways we could measure these things physically? Body temperature? Body language, sure. For a baby, what would that be? Like if a baby's feeling happy, what would the body language be? Anyone see baby, the little wavy hands kind of thing that they do, that kind of stuff? You've seen the babies, right? Do you think that these 6 primary emotions could affect other animals other than humans?
yeah.
So are we all in the agreement that animals can feel emotion? Some people don't think they can. Do you guys feel animals can feel emotion?
Well, let's take a dog.
Let's take a dog, sure, let's take a dog. Do you feel that these 6 primary emotions apply to dogs?
Maybe not all 6, but some do.
Okay, which ones do you feel don't apply to a dog?
How I don't feel disgust.
You never seen a dog smell something they didn't like? Actually, my dog's, it's not the same stuff we don't like. So, ooh, that's a delicious decay of poop this morning I'm smelling. Yeah. No, I mean, there's nothing better to a dog than the smell of another dog's butt. How about surprise? Has anyone seen a dog look surprised? So, how do you measure the primary emotions in a dog? Is it the same way? So it's more the whole body language, not just the facial. Okay. Do you feel these 6 primary emotions exist in animals beyond the dog? Can a goldfish feel the 6 primary feel this?
So not all of them, but some of them.
Not all of them?
Well, we can't
Okay.
tell because there's no.
There's no easy way to tell because maybe the body language. Is there any that you say you could tell in a goldfish from that list? Fear. How would you measure fear? Yeah, by its movement, the fact that it runs away.
Yeah. Surprise, same thing. It's very close to fear, but
Yeah, is there a way to distinguish those two?
actually I think it's more linked actually because they usually
Okay.
link those.
Now, are we sort of imbuing our emotions onto the goldfish? Do we know if it's actually fearing fear, or if it's working on what animal behavioralists would call instinct?
Well, instinct is fear.
Maybe it's anger. Yeah. Maybe it's happiness. Oh, here comes that hand again to grab me. I'm going to swim away. This is a fun game. I love this game. Maybe that's the case. There's no way to know.
But it's
Right?
instinctual to be afraid, to feel fear, so that you know when the predator's coming for you to run away.
I do not disagree at all. I agree with you completely. For those of you who didn't hear, she said that it's instinctive to feel fear, that it's like a survival mechanism, that, primates have this ability, oh, look, there's a thunderstorm coming, I should run away, right? Because the fear helps protect you and helps you survive. So maybe there's a ranking to these. Maybe the primary emotions actually have an evolutionary rank. Maybe we evolved fear first. Maybe we evolved disgust last. I don't know. I don't have the answer. You guys maybe should start thinking about that idea. There is no answer at this point because emotions are very tricky to track. The only way we often track them is through the result of them, right? Through the behavior that they cause, like facial expressions, like running away, like more complex emotions, like, for example, envy. How do we measure envy? How could you measure someone's level of envy?
Look at how much they complain about the other person.
Okay, so now you're measuring speech, right? So you could say, well, here's in the day they spoke this much about how much they disliked that other person's new car. So I'd say this person has a high level of envy. Would that be a way? Maybe? Something like that? Whereas you could measure someone's, say, happiness or fear. Maybe we could measure fear by attaching a heart rate monitor to a person. And when their heartbeat goes up and their blood pressure goes up, we could say, this is fear. Maybe we could put a brain scan on them, and parts of the brain that are lighting up when fear is happening, we could measure that, put a number on it. Could we do that with envy? Is there a brain center for envy? Maybe.
It's a mixture of stuff.
Right, maybe. Now, could we do the same thing with the goldfish? Could we put the goldfish in there and map the same way? Well, first of all, how do you think they map that part of the brain to be associated with, say, envy, if it did exist? How would they know that?
The way they do it for like happiness and sadness and stuff, like they put you up to the
Yeah.
and they show you like pictures of puppies,
Right.
early babies,
Yeah.
and then they go on to show you like, I don't know, a picture that makes you mad, like
Right.
I can't think of anything. And then they see which parts
But how do they know that picture's making you happy or sad? They ask you, right? They ask you, how does this picture make you feel? And you say, it makes me feel angry. And then they go, oh, okay, so we just saw that part of the brain light up based on that picture, so that must be associated with anger. Then they show them other pictures and they go, does that make you angry too? And they go, oh, look, the same part of the brain is lighting up. But that's all based on you saying that I'm angry at this point.
They also have it mapped out by now, like happiness and sadness.
Yeah, but that's how they mapped it, right? They mapped it that way.
They did it with several people, it's not just one.
Oh no, I'm not disagreeing that the mapping is wrong. The mapping is correct. But my question is, how do you map the goldfish? You can't, right? Because we can't ask the goldfish, what are you feeling right now? It's tricky, right? We can take a guess. We can guess that maybe the goldfish brain is similar to the human brain, and maybe it's the same part of the brain, but it's a very tricky thing. It kind of relies on language in a lot of ways.
Yeah, like animals that have like similar structures and stuff. It's like
Yeah, but again, we're making a sort of a jump in logic here, right? We're kind of assuming some stuff. Okay, enough about the primary emotions. When shown pictures of faces, expressions, okay, primary emotion are always evident, culturally across the board. So it doesn't matter what culture you come from, they can often register primary emotions through facial expression. Whether you're from North America or China or stuff, they can usually match them. So if I give you a bunch of pictures of faces, and I said match these with the 6 primary emotions, you guys would probably do really, really well. And if you guys were living in India right now, you'd probably do equally really, really well. Because it's kind of cross-cultural that when you are disgusted, you make a certain kind of face. When you are happy, you make a certain kind of face. Yes. Yeah. So the 2 psychologists, James and Lange, came up with the theory, the James-Lange theory, that says that emotions are physical. That they're not something that happens in your brain. These are actual physical events. That they are associated with things like physical facial structure and things like heart rate and stuff like that. That when you are feeling, for example, one of the 6 primary emotions, your body will change. It will adapt to that emotion. So when you're feeling angry, your heart rate will go up. Your face will tighten up. Your muscles will tense when you're angry. Your voice octave might change. There are actual physical clues to anger, and there are actual physical clues to the other 6 primary emotions. So, if you're about to write an exam and you're feeling nervous, maybe you have physical symptoms to diagnose nervous. Mouth is dry. Your gut is a bit rumbly. You got sort of butterflies in your guts. Your hands get sweaty. You might have to pee. This could be a way you could diagnose nervousness is through the physical symptoms. Does anyone, before I switch the slide, disagree with this? Okay, because I'm about to propose something with this. Well, I'm mostly speaking about the primary emotions, right? So do we feel that emotions have a physical response? Not all of them, but let's just focus with some of the primary ones. Yeah, this is the primary ones, okay? Sure, yeah. So you're saying happiness does not have a physical response? A smile, yeah. Heart rate might stabilize, maybe. Maybe faster. Okay. So, here's the James-Lange theory. James-Lange theory says, if you could remove the physical symptoms, would you remove the emotion? So in other words, that idea of being nervous before the exam, what if I could give you a drug that would make you not sweat? It could lower your heart rates. I could take away the dry mouth feeling. I could take away the gut feeling. If I could address all the physical symptoms, would you not feel nervous? Well, that's the theory. Well, that's what I'm saying. James-Lange theory says, if you remove all the physical symptoms, you will remove the emotion because the two are interconnected. So that emotion is physical, and therefore if you remove the physical, you remove the emotion. So imagine that. As well, they also say if you can put in the physical symptoms, like add them to the human, then you are adding the emotion. So right now I could theoretically make you guys all angry by adding all the physical traits of anger. So one I could just do right now, I'll have you guys make an angry face. You could all make an angry face. But what if I could also raise your heart rate? What if I could tense your muscles? All the physical things we associate with anger, if I could make all those happen right now, would I make you angry? So this is the controversy here. Is this a true theory, right? It suggests that if you mimic the appearance of physical symptoms, you can generate the corresponding emotion. Okay, I was going to show you guys a video at the end of this as well that kind of speaks to this. It is controversial, I'm not going to deny that, but it's something to think about. A great point. What do drugs that address emotions do? Do they just address the physical?
Yes, they do, which do affect.
Like, for example, an antidepressant drug. What does it address? What does that drug do? Yeah? Right, so it addresses the physical, right? Like, it can address like things like the heart rate and the sweating and stuff like that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but if it's still like if you take anti-anxiety meds, they're not going to make you stop going to this. They're going to calm your brain down.
Well,
Because your brain is calm.
but and again, here we're kind of stretching now a little more into the philosophical realm. How much of our existence is physical and how much of it is something else, whatever you want to call that? Because if it is just physical, then emotion is just physical. It's all biology. And then biology maybe is all chemistry. And according to Mr. Libby, it's all physics at that point. So really, if you're depressed, we should go talk to Mr. Libby because he can work out the physics, that'll work out the chemistry, that'll work out the biology, that'll work out the psychology, that'll make you feel better. So next time you're depressed, go see Mr. Libby. He'll fix you up. All right. The theory suggests that there's a mechanism that we can also empathize with other people's feelings, right? So if you're talking to someone who says, I'm depressed, we often mimic physical expressions of that person. I mean, think about that. When someone comes up to you and they're super excited, do you start mimicking their physical, even though you're maybe not that excited, but you want to kind of mimic their physical? Or angry, someone comes up to you, I'm so pissed today, and they come up to you and go, yeah, you're right. Meanwhile, you're not necessarily that way, but maybe the mimicking will start to push your emotions into the same zone as theirs. Yes? Yeah. So this is kind of, again, this idea of emotion being a very physical idea. And if it's physical and we can control the physical, maybe we can control the emotion. Or if we can't control the emotion, then maybe we can't control the physical. Okay, so now we'll pull in the role of beliefs into this. So the criticism of this theory is that it affects that our emotions have a mental state as well as a physical state. Okay? That our emotions, because again, I'm going to present the theory, then I'm going to tear it apart. Our emotions can be affected by our bodies, but they can also be affected by things other than our bodies, like, for example, our beliefs. Okay? Perhaps that is what distinguishes us from other animals. Maybe we don't dispute that dogs feel emotion, right? But maybe we dispute the fact that dogs have a set of beliefs. Now, I'm not here to be pro-dog belief or con-dog belief with you guys. I'm just saying this is a way to look at it, right? So if we look at things like social emotions, like you guys have brought up, jealousy, ambition, contempt, embarrassment. Does a dog feel embarrassment? Does a dog feel envy? I'm so envious of the neighbor's dog. He has the nicest doghouse ever. Is that something we attribute to dogs?
Well, if you get a new dog and you're paying more attention to the new dog than the old dog gets envy.
So then maybe absolutely we can attribute that, right? So these are kind of social emotions differing from the primary emotions in a lot of ways. But is that kind of a trait of humans, that higher order animals have higher order emotion? Do goldfish feel envy? It's like goldfish looks across to the bowl across at the fish store and says, oh man, he's got the little castle guy. I don't have the castle guy. Why don't I have the castle guy? I need the castle guy, right?
Memory span for goldfish like 5 seconds.
It could, yeah, well, yeah. So for that 5 seconds, that goldfish is extremely envious, right? Okay. But maybe, again, this adds a little bit to the human factor, that there's something beyond the physical. Maybe it's beliefs. Maybe there's a set of goldfish that have a certain beliefs. Maybe we don't think that, okay? So maybe it's a factor of intelligence, that if we have a higher intelligence, if we have something like imagination, if we have, say, a longer memory span than, say, the goldfish, maybe that does lead into higher level emotions. A dog might be worried about its environment, but you can worry about things like exams that are coming up when you are in university. That's a pretty high stretch there, to think that you could worry about an exam at university now, whereas a dog is worried about just stuff in its environment.
Sorry for the interruption. With Ms. Moore, please contact the office, please.
So
Ms. Moore, please contact the office.
maybe this is why dogs don't feel the level of stress that humans do, if we accept that. Because they maybe don't have that level of intelligence, and maybe they don't have that level of memory. So does this imply that if you're dumber, you'll have less emotions? Maybe, right? And if you're smarter, are you going to be more emotional? Because now you have more to worry about, maybe. Is this a factor? Right. Okay, so all of you who've, great point. So all of you who have taken physics in here, or have watched physics, or have learned about physics, specifically astrophysics, know that the universe is approaching heat death, right? Anyone know that? Can anyone explain that theory? That the universe is expanding and eventually it will lose all the energy of expansion and it'll essentially stop and it will become all cold and lose all energy and reach heat death and basically be done. The entire universe will be dead. The fact that you know that might cause you stress. Because it's like, oh my God, the universe is going to die. By the way, not right away. This is not happening anytime soon, okay? But you know what? I bet you a dog is not sitting around thinking, oh my God, the universe is going to die and I'm going to be dead. Maybe that's because the dog is not at that level of intelligence. The goldfish may not be stressing out over the heat death of the universe as well. But again, it's this relation to emotion, okay? If you go into a dark room and you see a snake sitting in the corner of the room, you might be scared. I would be. I'd be scared. But when the light comes up and you realize that it wasn't actually a snake, it was just a big pile of rope in the corner of the room, you won't feel scared anymore. But that was because your belief changed your emotion. You believed it was a snake, and now you believe it's not a snake. And so your belief had a factor on that emotion. So it could be easily argued that belief can affect emotion. If you believe that this school was about to collapse on you right now, you'd probably be scared and run out of here. I would. Okay? If you believed that there was a man in the school with a gun, you might be afraid. And then when your belief changed, when you don't believe that anymore, that it was just a drill, your emotions certainly could change. Okay? Genius is one sprint is inspiration and 99% perspiration is a quote from Thomas Edison, a very famous quote that kind of speaks to how he might have viewed emotion. Okay, so let's talk about how emotion gives you energy. Is emotion the juice that drives you? Okay? Is it that? Is emotion the fuel? I mean, you guys go to class and you study stuff and you're going to do IB courses. Why? And what gets you going in the morning? Is it just emotion? Is it more than that? Okay? Maybe the idea to come up with new ideas. If any of you in this room are going to be these new innovators 20 years from now, maybe it's a little bit of intelligence, but maybe it's also a lot of emotion to drive that. Okay? I mean, a lot of your work every day here at school can be boring. Let's be honest. It can be absolutely boring. Okay? Think about that for some guy who's working as a mathematician in a university. He's been doing it for the past 30 years, sitting at a desk, working with numbers. There are probably days he's pretty bored, or she's pretty bored about doing that. There are biologists who have to keep doing the same types of formulas day in and day out. There's going to be days they're pretty bored. There are writers sitting at typewriters and computers that are writing stories that there are days that they're not really excited about doing it. Maybe the reason they continue is the idea that they will create something meaningful down the line, and therefore they are driven to keep going through something that you could describe as passion. And maybe passion has a direct relation to emotion. So maybe emotion is kind of that energy that we need to keep going, to keep pushing through. And if that's the case, then maybe emotion is a way of knowing, okay? Maybe it's not a direct line on knowledge, but maybe it's a fuel behind knowledge. Okay, so this is what we're going to debate a lot in this unit, is what role does emotion play in knowledge, okay? Traditional view, emotion is an obstacle. We get past emotion. I mean, you may have had that when you were in middle school, teachers saying to you, everyone calm down, just settle down. Stop that. We got learning to go here, implying that emotion is a hindrance to knowledge. But maybe that shouldn't be the way at all. Maybe we should embrace emotion as a positive role in learning and not a negative role. Okay. So we're going to really look at it in these three areas. Is emotion an obstacle to knowledge? Is emotion a source of knowledge? And then the third way we're actually going to break and leave till sort of the next unit and look at this idea of what is intuition. Okay, so that's what I have for you today. Now,